Full confession, I forgot I had a couple of these draft recaps to still do, so it feels awkward to not finish out the series. So that's what I'm here to do. So I'm going to crank through the NFC West, and then a few hours later you'll probably see an upload of the AFC West, so we can at least be done. And then I'll do like a 2026 like first NFL mock draft video just because, yeah, why not, right? But anyways, let's talk about the NFC West and how all these teams did in the division. Um, in terms of who I think did the worst, at least in the short term, would be the Los Angeles Rams. You know, that's a byproduct largely of trading away your first round pick this year to get a first round pick next year. But, you know, when you think bigger picture, it doesn't make them so much of losers. I really think, though, for the Rams, it stands to reason for me that they were looking at Jackson Dart at pick 26, and when the Giants traded up ahead of them at 25, it's one of these things that even if you don't have all the intel or the behind the scenes, you feel like you can plug two and two together pretty nicely. Giants traded ahead of the Rams to 25 for a reason. They took Jackson Dart. As soon as Jackson Dart was taken by the Giants at 25, the Rams deal out of pick 26 and take a future first rounder next year. I mean, I'm just saying, right? Which makes a lot of sense when you're thinking about the Rams. Like this draft, I don't want to say is totally a wash, but the most important thing, if they weren't going to come out of this draft with a young quarterback, and it's understandable why they didn't go after one, because this was not a great quarterback class, and they might be looking at next year's draft and saying, hey, if we've got 2 first-round picks, and we need to be in the young quarterback market to prepare for life after Matthew Stafford, you're going to want to have that extra draft pick capital in case you need to go get a guy. So from that standpoint, the Rams were certainly winners in terms of their approach on this year's draft weekend. But when you look at the immediate help, I don't know that there's going to be a ton there. Like Terrence Ferguson, the tight end from Oregon, frankly, to me, felt like a bit of a reach there in the middle of round 2. Josiah Stewart, the edge from Michigan, later in round 3. Like, you're not expecting him to come in and be a Jared Verse level of player or something like that, but he certainly should contribute. Hunter, the running back from Auburn, feels destined to be like a role player type of guy. I do think that Chris Paul Jr. can come in, their 5th round pick, the linebacker from Ole Miss, and he has some like starter potential, but at least like high-end special teamer, quality backup type of guy. But, like in the immediate term, they didn't get a ton of help. But to me, this is all about preparing themselves for next year. Next up, I'll go with the San Francisco 49ers, and I look at each of their picks, the first 3-4 rounds, and especially the first 3 rounds, and I thought all of them were reaches a little bit. I know Mykal Williams was certainly being projected in that draft range of anywhere from like 8 to 13, 14 or so. So he lands here at 11 with the 49ers. I didn't think he was that level of talent in this draft, but it's different people can disagree, and especially in this type of class, like once you got past the top few like notable prospects, everything else could be up for grabs, I suppose. But then Alfred Collins felt like a bit of a reach in the middle of round 2. Nick Martin, the linebacker from Oklahoma State, similar story, kind of in round 3. Now, who am I to judge the 49ers and their history in recent years? They will certainly have some really bad misses in the draft, and then they will hit some absolute fucking grand slam home runs, right? There's a reason they've tended to kind of be in the mix here. But overall from this draft, like, I think they got some solid value on day 3, but I looked at day 1 and day 2. I wasn't that thoroughly impressed, even though they certainly did need to address the defense. I was really surprised that they waited until round 7 to address youth and depth on the offensive line at all. You got Trent Williams is about 37. Like, it's been a key to your success, being good on the trenches on both sides of the ball. So it makes sense. Invest your first couple of picks on the defensive line. Why didn't you do more on the offensive line? So I thought it was a middle-of-the-road draft for the 49ers at best. And then I look at the Seattle Seahawks. And this is one where, address the offensive line in round 1 with Gray Zabel. Feels like, presuming he's going to be a center, he'll be an 8 to 10 year starter in the league and probably a pretty good one. They made a move up in round 2 to get Emin Wari, the safety from South Carolina. He's a great athlete. how much of that translates into him being a big-time player at the next level, but like the thought of him there in Seattle in that McDonald defense. I think that's a good fit for him. And then they drafted Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, with their other second-round pick. And even when you get to like late round 3, Jalen Milroe being projected as a first-round pick was always probably a little crazy. But now you start getting here to the end of round 3, and you're like, yeah, you've signed Sam Darnold, but doesn't hurt to take a stab at the quarterback position, throw a dart here, why don't you? And Jalen Milroe certainly a guy that has some upside. Like, he's raw as hell and he needs work. But at that point in time in the draft, like, you're swinging for the fences in terms of upside. So I get where the Seahawks are going there. But I think their first 3 picks all chance to have chances to be future long-term starters. Zabel's going to be an anchor in that offensive line, and Wari certainly has a chance to be a focal point of their defense going forward. So it was like a solid B- kind of draft for them. And I think the team that ultimately did the best in this division in the draft was the Arizona Cardinals. Walter Nolan at pick 16 gets them another pass rusher on that defensive front. Good value there. Like, that's about where he should have went. And when you look at who else was available on the board at that point, you're like, okay, this one makes quite a bit of sense. But then they thought they got some really good value in round 2 with Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Look, like, knee injury or not, or knee concerns or not, the reality is that you take that away and you're talking about an arguably top 10 talent in this draft. Now, you might have some concerns about his speed and so forth, but at the end of the day, like, for sure, a first-round talent. And the Cardinals get him here middle of round 2. So to sit there and say, like, hey, initially you might have thought you'd have to take a Will Johnson at 16 and then maybe trade back up to round 1 to get somebody like a Walter Nolan. You walk out of this draft with both of them, some pretty big additions to their defense. And then getting Jordan Birch in round 3, that was solid. Cody Simon and Denzel Burke in rounds 4 and 5, more defenders from Ohio State. The only knock I would really have on this Cardinals draft is it's great to build up your defense, but you only invested 1 pick on the offensive side of the ball. Is your offense really that star-spangled awesome? Are you really that great? Are you really that set where you could afford to not invest more and build up that offense around Kyler Murray? Like, do you really envision Kyler Murray as that type of multiplier type of guy that's going to elevate everybody around him? That feels a bit far-fetched in my opinion. Like, you couldn't have invested a wide receiver at some point in time, a running back, more offensive line help. I don't know. Like, it's one of these situations, again, you could look at a bubble and you could say the picks themselves make a lot of sense. They're good, and they were for the Cardinals. And they certainly address positions of need. But sometimes I do question the strategies, right? And I say the underlying strategy here, and sometimes it might just be the way the board falls and the way it works out, the way a team prioritizes. I think they should have prioritized offense a little bit more in this draft. That's all I'm saying.